The year was 1992, and video games were more popular than ever. It was also the start of what we here at the Labs refer to as the golden era of Nickelodeon. What the Orange Network for Kids had in store would change video games and game shows as we knew them. They had done it. They had found a way to make the two intertwine. They successfully mixed video games and the iconic television game show formulas. What they had invented would become an experience that gamers of all types would want to attempt. But only a few would ever get the chance, as well as a few Nickelodeon celebrities. And most importantly, they created the topic for today's video. Hey everybody, what's up and welcome back to Macabre'Gorium Labs presents School of Boredom, a showcase of things likely forgotten, Nickelodeon edition. My name is Bats and I'll be your guide today for lesson N107, Nickelodeon Arcade. How many points do you wager? Oh, Nickelodeon Arcade, where TV game shows and video games meet. That's right, in a world where most parents and adults had Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, and Price is Right, Nickelodeon was already well on their way to making game shows of their own, with competing titles like Think Fast, Wild and Crazy Kids, Finders Keepers, and the iconic Double Dare franchise. Nickelodeon knew it was time to up their game. And they would do this by intertwining the two main staples of being a kid in the 1990s by combining Nickelodeon programming with video games. And so they made a game show called Nickelodeon Arcade, or as some refer to it, Nick Arcade. Much as I'm gonna do for the rest of this lesson. There is a little complicated and conflicting history behind this one, and while I did reach out to Nickelodeon and some people that we know that are in the industry, they either didn't respond or weren't involved with this particular show. So most of the information for this one was compiled by watching about 15 straight episodes of the show in a row, some Reddit posts, the wiki fandom, some old magazine articles, Internet Archive, several other websites, and personal experiences from us here at the Labs and in the Macabre'Gorium family. So if anything in this video is wrong or we forget to mention anything, please feel free to let us know in the comments section. After all, we're only human, right? The show consists of two teams of two kids. The team's colors are red and yellow. The gameplay would have the face-off, 2 rounds, and the final round in the video zone, while round 1 and 2 were pretty much the same. As the program starts, we get a very 1990s opening, complete with fog machines, sci-fi video game music, and a giant door that would appear. The show's announcer, Andrea Lively, would explain that behind the door was the video zone, and introduce potential bosses and explain the basic premise of the show, before introducing the show's host, Phil Moore. Phil would then take the stage and start part 1 of the game, the first face-off challenge.
The face-off challenges are where a person from each team battles it out over a 2-player video game with the goal of gaining 25 points for their team and basically being first to play for round 1. It's sort of like this game's version of a coin toss. The face-off round would last approximately 30 seconds.
And before the players actually start playing, Phil explains the rules of the face-off challenge, and these rules will vary depending on the game they have to face off to. The face-off is usually won by either beating your opponent in score or by beating them couch versus style. The face-off round technically had 8 different games, but more accurately they had 3 games with different themes.
These face-off games were created by Bethia Mytov Productions along with Psygnosis and Saddleback Live Studios.
Amongst these face-off games, there was Meteoroids and Laser Surgeon, which were target move and shoot shooters. There was Brainstorm, Battle of the Bands, and Star Defenders. These were the same type of game as Pong. And finally, they had Post Haste, Jet Jocks, and Carter Ranger. And while none of these 3 would be in Season 1, they were included for Season 2, and they are side-scrolling obstacle dodgers. Each of these special game versions would last around 30 seconds, with the victor being the player that scored the most points or distance within the time limit. After a winner of the face-off has been decided, we move on to round 1. Before round 1 starts, Phil takes time to introduce both teams, revealing one fact about each team member with some light but quick banter, before moving on to explain the rules of round 1. But I think I'll let Phil fill you in.
Right, hey, now you all know how to play. Let's tell it to them. You're going to take Mikey, our video adventurer, and move him all around the screen in any direction except diagonally. Now, as you do this, you're going to run into our 4 Ps: points, puzzles, pop quizzes, and prizes. Be careful, though, because we have an enemy up there. You land on him, you lose control of Mikey to the other team. Now, all questions in round 1 are worth 25 points, and the team with the most points at the end of the 2 rounds will go inside of a video game to face today's game wizards. All right, these guys are ready.
So in round 1, players take the character Mikey around the episode's chosen map, hoping to land on one of the 4 Ps: points, pop quizzes, puzzles, and prizes. The players that get to control Mikey get to move him 1 square at a time closer to the goal until they either lose a puzzle, a pop quiz, or a challenge. These rounds were also where we are introduced to Mikey's World. Mikey's World is where rounds 1 and 2 take place, and players will get to experience 2 of 11 possible lands. Yes, there were 11 themed places in Mikey's World, and there would be 2 sections per area. There was Pirate's Cove, which was of course a pirate beach themed board. There was Cape Cosmos, and this one would send Mikey into outer space. The Land of Camel Little, that was themed after a medieval time period. The Pacific Ocean, that obviously took place underwater. We had the Forgotten Desert, and this one was something similar to Egyptian themed. There was Slurpy Gulch, one of my favorites, which was a Wild West theme. Volcano Jungle. This one had something of a jungle with a volcano theme. And Creepyville. Obviously, this one was my absolute favorite, based on a macabre mansion next to a spooky swamp. Then Mikey's Neighborhood. This was Mikey's Turf, a basic suburban area. Then the Time Portal. This one was neat because Mikey would be in Mikey's neighborhood only either in the past or the future. And finally, there's the We Got 'Em Mall. If you haven't guessed yet, this one's based on a shopping mall.
And for those kids that don't know, a shopping mall was a place for 80s and 90s kids to go hang out with no money in an effort to pretend to be cool. These people were known as mall rats, which is a topic for a different video.
Contestants would get to experience 2 of the aforementioned locations per episode of the show, seemingly at random. When the round begins, the players that are in control of Mikey move him 1 square at a time closer to the goal, hoping for those coveted prize and point squares, otherwise they might lose control to the opposing team. However, a vast majority of the time, the rounds would end early due to time constraints, at which point Mikey would be immediately moved to the goal, and it would become a trivia question that would decide who gains the goal's 50 points. Now I know what you're thinking.
No way, Bats, there was definitely more to it than that.
And you're right. So, we already discussed the 4 Ps, points, puzzles, pop quizzes, and prizes, but our friend Mikey had a little more to contend with than just that. In fact, there were a total of 8 possible blocks Mikey could land on during his journey. The points block, which was a little self-explanatory, land on one of these and get 25 points. The puzzle blocks. This refers to the video puzzles. These were challenges where the players would be presented with a sample of a video that was usually scrambled in some way, and they would have to identify people or things from the distorted clip. The pop quizzes were again exactly what they sound like, a trivia challenge. The winner of said challenge would gain 25 points and control of Mikey. And prizes. Land on one of these spots and you win a prize. But there were 4 other squares we haven't even talked about yet. Time bombs, enemies, video challenges, and the goal. So a time bomb square is a special occurrence that only happens on the extremely rare event when a team moves Mikey to a spot that he has already visited. When this happens, it activates the game's time bomb. So how does this time bomb work? Well, when activated, the team responsible would have to alternate between each other to spell a word, 1 letter at a time. Failure to complete the word in time meant the opposing team would gain control of Mikey, and no matter if success was achieved or not, no points were awarded for defusing the game's time bomb. For the enemy squares, each theme in Mikey's world had its very own enemies. They were as follows. Pirate's Cove had Blackboard the Pirate. Cape Cosmos would introduce Mikey to the giant smooch aliens. Camalittle had an obvious fire-breathing dragon. And while in the Pacific Ocean, Mikey would have to keep an eye out for a hammerhead shark. If Mikey finds himself in the Forgotten Desert, he would need to keep a lookout for the troublesome Ginny. Down in Slurpy Gulch, Silly the Kid, a cow baby, would be looking for trouble. Volcano Jungle is where Mikey could encounter the Witch Doctor. When adventuring in Creepyville, given its haunted theme, obviously Mikey would need to avoid the ghost. And finally, for Mikey's Neighborhood and its time portal versions, past and future, as well as the We Got 'Em Mall, Mikey would have to keep an eye out for Game Over the Bully. And yes, the bully's name is actually Game Over. If Mikey lands on an enemy square, control over him is given to the opposing team without any form of challenge. Sometimes the controlling team would uncover a square that had a video challenge. This is the first defining feature for this show and one of the things that separates it from traditional game shows. When the video challenge is initiated, the team responsible follows Phil as he sings and boogies his way over to the lineup of custom arcade games made specifically for this show. Phil would then explain the rules and ask one team member to choose from the available cabinets, while explaining the other teammate would have to write down a point wager on a Nickelodeonized Magnadoodle. Most of the time, the teammates would wager points in increments of 5. Although this was not a rule, occasionally they would wager an odd number, which I found hilarious. If the challenge is won, then the team would get the amount of points wagered added to their score and keep control of Mikey. However, if the challenge was failed, the team would lose the wagered amounts of points and lose control over Mikey.
Now these games were custom, in that even though they were popular titles, they were engineered just for the show.
These games would be played on the NES, the SNES, the Genesis, the TurboGrafx-16, and the Neo Geo, each with its own arcade cabinet set to one custom game. Usually these cabinets featured very popular titles like Sonic the Hedgehog, Ghosts 'n Goblins, and Chuck Rock. Once a cabinet has been played in a video challenge, its lit-up marquee goes dim, while the idle screen continues to play, and that game cannot be played again in that episode. And finally, we have the goal square. Finding this would mean the end of the round, but the team that lands on the goal square first has to answer a trivia question asked by Phil from a topic chosen by the other team. And a successful answer would result in 50 points. Then, if the timer had run out and Mikey was unable to reach the goal before said timer ran out, Mikey would automatically be moved to the goal and the round would move into sudden death. Sudden death in this case means both teams get asked the same trivia question at the same time, but they have to buzz in to answer. The first team to answer the sudden death question correctly gets the 50 points, and then the round ends. Then, after a quick commercial break, we come back for round 2, which also starts with a face-off round. If the second round results in a tie, a sudden death 100-point tiebreaker would be initiated and the victor would go on to face the day's wizard in the video zone. Other than that, the winning team with the most points at the end of both rounds would advance to the video zone. This is it. The reason that this game show was such a hit. This was the big thing. The video zone. This part of the game is by far the part that intrigued most fans because it put you in the game. I mean, what kid didn't want to go toe-to-toe with video game villains? That's right, the video zone would use you as the playable character. No Kinect, no VR, no headsets or controllers, just you, a blue screen, and I can only assume a few monitors showing your augmented reality video game. Just like the earlier portion of the show, players would play 2 rounds referred to as levels before gaining access to the wizard level. But let's take a look at the levels, modes of play, and bosses. Excluding the wizard layer, there were a possible of 2 of 13 levels, some of which only appeared after Season 1. And as far as we can tell, most of the time, these levels would correspond in some way to the round 1 and 2 maps. Each level contained a power-up that would have a random effect like freezing time for a few seconds, rendering all the enemies and threats temporarily harmless, eliminating the on-screen baddies, or restoring power or life. And these scenes looked like they could get pretty chaotic. Available levels for level 1 were the Alien Moon Base. Something like a space station, the player would have to activate 3 switches in order to progress to the next level. The Haunted Museum. This was meant to be like a Haunted Mansion style level where the player would have to collect 3 statue heads or busts in order to move on. Jungle Fever. In this level, the player must grab 3 bunches of bananas while moving around a jungle setting. In the Ancient Tomb, the players would have to collect 3 coins while climbing around a tomb avoiding dangers. And Monsters on the Loose. This one reminds me of one of my all-time favorite video games, Rampage, because in this one the player takes on the role of a giant kid that has to rescue 3 humans from being kidnapped by aliens. After playing this, the players would move on to level 2 and one of the following levels. Mine Maze. This level closely resembles the Ancient Tomb level, and the player would have to collect 3 coins in order to proceed. The Subsearch level would see the player riding a video game jet ski. While riding, they would need to avoid obstacles related to the setting. Then there was the Nile River Raft. Similar to Subsearch, the player would be riding a wooden raft on a river in an effort to collect 3 gems while avoiding perils. Runaway Rail Car. This level goes back to the Wild West, where the player would use a rail cart, as seen in several cartoons, while moving through a Wild West town or gold mines attempting to collect 3 coins. Snow Slingers. In a weird twist, this level does not require the player to collect anything. Instead, it's more of a virtual snowball fight, where the player needs to hurl snowballs at elves while the elves throw snowballs right back, the goal being to take out 3 of the angry elves. Food Fight. The Food Fight level finds the player smack dab in the middle of a school lunchroom during a food fight. During this food fight, the players must avoid obstacles and collect 3 textbooks placed around the room in order to progress. The Enchanted Flight. This was another level that sees the players standing in one spot instead of maneuvering around the area. In this one, the player is riding a magic carpet while attempting to grab 3 rings while avoiding obstacles. And last but not least, we have Cliffhanger. Crawling up the side of a cliff, Cliffhanger would task the player with uncovering cave entrances in effort to collect 3 coins while avoiding obstacles. Once players completed the 2 levels, if they completed the 2 levels, they would get the chance to go battle one of the show's 3 bosses in the Wizard level, level 3. This show has one of 3 possible bosses for players to contend with: Mongo, Scorcha, and Murloc. Each boss was similar, especially in Season 1. However, these bosses' settings would change in Season 2. Upon starting the Wizard level, both players are present and use a joint effort to take on the episode's boss. Players would battle the bosses by attempting to touch 3 energy balls in the room while avoiding bosses' attacks, as well as assorted obstacles and enemies.
There was a power-up, an hourglass that caused all enemies, obstacles, and even the boss to become inactive for 5 seconds. And when you only have 60 seconds to complete all 3 levels, 5 seconds could change everything.
Upon beating the boss, the words, "You did it! You beat the game!" appear on screen, and players exit the game room, returning to the stage with Phil to wrap up and recap on what prizes they won. We will likely go more in depth on bosses, levels, and even prizes in future School of Boredom videos, so keep an eye out for that. But did you know that this show also had its fair share of celebrity appearances? During its run, the show would have a few famous guests, mostly from Nickelodeon shows, but the celebrity guests include the casts of Salute Your Shorts, Welcome Freshmen, and Clarissa Explains It All. I would like to point out on that last one, I personally was a little shocked. Why? I'll tell you. Because as it would turn out, at least at this point, Melissa Joan Hart is one of the worst video game players I've ever seen. And let me tell you, back then this was quite the jarring discovery, because in her show, and yes, before you go off in the comments, we are aware she didn't actually make video games, it was just a plot device for the show. But in the show, she made her own games. That, and how is a 90s teenager not good at playing video games? I mean, really. Joe O'Connor and Elizabeth Hess totally schooled both of the kids. Luckily, these celebrity editions were played for charity, and in the end, both teams won in order to maximize donation to said charities. Also during its run, according to the Nickelodeon Arcade Wiki, the show would have one non-Nick celebrity, with NSYNC's Joey Fatone.
You can't enter that tournament without the proper skills, Fat One.
And will you train me, Mr. Miyagi?
First of all, I'm Pat effin' Morita, you nutsack.
Needless to say, his team did not make it into the video zone. Hey, Goat.
What's up, Bats?
I guess Joey Fatone just couldn't get his team in sync.
Wow, Bats, that was bad. So bad that NSYNC jokes should go down the drain.
In 2015, there was almost a revival of the show. Creators James Bethia and Kareem Maitif would start with a Kickstarter to get it off the ground. But they were unable to meet the $350,000 goal, and the show, if successful, would have been called Nth Level, and would have included advancements in interactive video game tech, as well as updated games for the players to play. Do you have any favorite Nickelodeon memories? Were you on this show? Leave us a comment and let us know. You can also drop suggestions for future videos, or just stop in and say hi. We love to hear from you. And with that, we've come to the end of another School of Boredom Nickelodeon Edition lesson with Lesson N107, Nickelodeon Arcade. How many points do you wager? I've been your host, Bats, and be sure to check back next time because you never know what we have in store. As usual, think for yourselves, be excellent to each other, yeah, and keep it creepy. And I'm gonna boogie on out of here. Hey, thanks for checking out our video. If you enjoyed this one and would like to see more of our weird, creepy, odd, eccentric, or strange content as soon as it comes out, please feel free to click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more. We'll see you later. Keep it creepy.